Today's guest on the Saltwater Edge Podcast is a renowned author and videographer with over 50 years of saltwater fishing experience. He's most recognized in surfcasting for striped bass, albies, weakfish, blackfish, and fluke. Over the years, he's contributed to various publications, including On the Water, Surfcaster's Journal, and Shallow Water Angler. He is known for his methodical and productive approach. Recently retired, he now splits his time between Eastern Long Island and Pine Island Sound, Florida. He shares his knowledge through a top-rated YouTube channel, a series of online courses, and several self-published books. He is one of the authors that I find myself rereading the most. Please welcome John Skinner to the Saltwater Edge Podcast. How are we doing, John?
All right. Thanks for having me, Peter.
You bet. And you're still in New York.
I am, yeah.
That looks like a New York house, not a Florida house.
Yeah, it is. Actually, normally I would be out of here by now, but we had a little complication. I had my first grandchild was born, and my wife is out helping my daughter with that child. In fact, in 2 days, I'm going to go fly out there and see the baby.
Excellent.
And so that has delayed my trip to Florida by maybe 10 days or so. But December 1st, I'll be heading down to Florida for the winter.
Yep. And I one of your your latest video, you were on the beach, birds working and everything else. So you'd have to leave that to go to Florida. I was curious when you make that transition. Is it generally middle of November kind of thing down there?
It is. And you know what? It's usually the right time. I don't think I've really left here and said, oh boy, I'm missing this or I'm missing that. I kind of, squeeze what I can out of this and then boom, down to Florida. So.
Yeah, we've had that this fall. We've had that unrelenting north wind. And I kept my boat in an extra now 2 weeks. And 2 times I was busy when it finally stopped blowing. But it's been a pretty, and you fish the south side of South Shore of Long Island a fair amount, right? So the wind comes over the island and knocks.
Well, I've been doing that this year because for whatever reason, the North Fork has been horrible this fall. Normally I'll stay on the North Fork because that's where I live, and within a couple miles of my house, I've got great fishing. I mean, it's ground zero for the albies. And the striper fishing is good, and I know the area very, very well. Right. And why jump in the car and drive 35 miles when you can drive 2 or 3? But this fall, for whatever reason, the North Fork there's been no albies. I've never seen a year where I didn't see an albie, and it's not just me. I mean, I'm hearing the same thing. Oh. And the striper fishing has been poor. On the other hand, if you're a West Hampton beach surfcaster, I've had a couple of them tell me it's the best year they've ever had. So, I've made the drive now and found myself fishing the South Shore, which I love doing. I love being on the sand. I did that for so many years. But then once I moved to the North Fork, it got a little farther away from me because it's just a little farther away. And at the same time, I've got great fishing, right in my neighborhood. So I haven't been motivated to go to the South Shore until this year. Yeah.
I don't want to geek out on the geography, but it is pretty interesting. It's a job to get from the North Fork to the South Fork. You either get involved in a couple of ferries, you got to drive into Riverhead. Well, you said 35 minutes. That's
35 miles. 35 miles.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's a Long Island 35 miles too. It can be pretty tough with the traffic.
Well, no, it's actually 45, 50 minutes. It's not too bad. It's not bad at all. But part of it is too, I can monitor the North Fork. I know what's going on. Right. I believe it or not, I don't have a fishing network. Like if I don't find fish on my own, I don't get fish. So I have no idea what's going on the South Shore. And so I'm kind of blind in that respect. But you know what? It was a sand eel run, so that's easy. I mean, if you know how to look, when the waves are up, the sand eels are getting churned, the bass are there, so that's a pretty easy pattern. So I found myself doing that, and it was great to be back on the sand. But I don't know what happened on the North Fork, and what we have the last couple of days is crazy. We see, like, it looks like if you look at the beach, you'll go, "Oh my God, it's an epic blitz." You see birds so dense you couldn't possibly cast because you'd get tangled with them, and the water brownish red with anchovies.
Bay anchovies.
No bass on them at all. You know what's on them is little mackerel about 10 inches. I've never ever seen that here. Not even one time. I mean, I used to get mackerel in the spring when I was a kid, but we never had them in the fall, and I've never seen that. But that's what's happening is these mackerel are like driving the bait, and the birds are driving the bait,
Right.
and there are no bass on them.
I think bass and albies are generally a tough combo too. Right? I mean, you find bass on them, but they won't be very big. A lot of cases, right? I mean,
what do you mean on the anchovies?
Anchovies.
Yeah, but slots, and
it's a tug.
Fun fish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when they're blitzing, and slots a couple over. It's a good North Fork run. Like we had it good last year at times, and actually we had them. A week ago we had a couple shots, but not like a normal year. It was a messed up year. It was a messed up year.
Did you get the bonito that we got in Rhode Island?
So we had bonito. I personally didn't get on them. I heard mostly they were small. And I didn't personally get on them, but they were in the area, and that's unusual. We usually don't get bonito. We get albies, and we get lots of albies.
Yeah.
But not this year.
Yeah. I always feel like the bonito get pushed out by the albies.
Now, somebody said to me the other day, said that he felt that bonito and albies don't mix, and he said the opposite. He goes, when I find bonito, I never find albies.
Right.
And but there couldn't have been enough bonito to deplete Long Island Sound of albies.
Oh yeah, no, but I feel like the albies arrive second, and they displace the bonito because they're so aggressive and bigger, and
that's what I would think would happen. Yeah, because we get big albies too. Yeah,
it's I get out there for that a couple of times a year. One of the things you already mentioned, and I was watching it one of your most recent videos, the one with the e-bike, the most recent one. And I was curious what observations you have about birds and bait. I mean, I watched that video, and you were fishing a sand eel, I believe tsunami sand eel, but it's just the idea that you see birds hovering, you see birds down close to the water. You said you saw in different, we were just talking about how you had anchovies and birds working, but nothing really to show for it. Do you this time of year, you have so many of these bird events. Do you have anything that helps you sort out whether this is worth putting your time into or not?
Well, that was a bucktail I was throwing on those fish. Yeah. Well, usually it's up until like 3 days ago, it was very simple. If you've got birds that are actively working, you've got bass. I mean, it's just that. But it's just been this last couple of days, this odd thing of the mackerel pushing ridiculous amounts of anchovies to the beach, and I don't understand how there's no bass, because these areas have bass, at least some small ones, all the time, and there's none. I mean, look, if they were there, you would see them, and plus I fished them. The other guy was fishing them. They just weren't there. So this week has been kind of a pain, or the last 4 days or so, because now you look and you see what looks like the mother load of fish, but it's not.
I'm looking over your shoulder through your GoPro, and I'm like, let's go. I see the birds and everything else, and it's
normally that's the case. Normally when you see birds here in the fall, there's fish. It's 100%. But just the last few days, it's been a very odd setup. Yeah.
The I know I really enjoyed your bucktailing book. And let me just rattle off the books. Well, actually, you could, but I've got the list right here on the inside. Maybe I don't. It is Stripe of Pursuit. This is the one that's got Post-its and notes and all of it through it. It's the one I reread the most.
That makes me feel good. Yeah, that's nice and beat up. That's great. Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah.
Honestly, I use it to refer to lures. I use it. I particularly liked, and I'll save it for a conversation. But your fall run bait fish progression.
Yeah.
You did a nice job of talking about beach structure without pictures and lots of words. You really made it pretty concise. I think a lot of that takes a lot of. Sometimes a picture goes a long way. How did you? I'm curious because at the Saltwater Edge, we publish a lot of stuff. How did it work out for you with the QR codes as a reference in this book?
Oh, it was awesome. People love it. Because look, I'm in that rare position where I've got a YouTube channel with all of that content.
Right.
And I often would, like, if you look at that book, for instance, you've got the different lure classes. So let's say
Yeah.
there's a chapter on metal lips, for example. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I've got a video where I'm catching bass on metal lips. So what could be better than reading about metal lips and then
Right.
hit the QR code, and then you get to see me do it.
Or see him swim.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
So and I've got all the lure, whether it's, well, bucktails, many different ways in that
Mhm.
book, because so many different environments. But yeah, pencil poppers. So it was great to be able to have all those lure classes and then have supporting video, and people loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. I know one of your YouTube videos has 1.4 million views.
Yeah, it's probably junk. Yeah,
That's you getting boarded by the Coast Guard.
exactly. Yeah, it frustrates me, because I've got a lot of good videos, and I get, a
Yeah.
lot of views. And what gets the views is, yeah, there's one with I think it's 2.6 million. It's a 3.5 minute video where a DEC officer comes over,
Oh, that's the
very
next one. Yeah.
very
Yeah.
friendly,
Yeah.
looks in the cooler, we chat, off he goes. Why did that get 2.6 million views?
Yeah.
I don't get it, and yeah, then there's Coast Guard stops me. Oh, hi, John, how you doing? We chat for a few seconds. All right, yeah, have a good one. 1.4 million views.
Yeah.
You make a great fishing video, and
I
you
know the
get
work that goes
20,000.
into it too, man.
Yeah,
It's so.
yeah, it's that's why when as soon as you rattled off that number, I was like, yeah, junk. Yeah.
Well, you've done all of us a great service. You're super knowledgeable. And I know there's 180 surf casting videos there. There's 40 on weakfish. I mean, there's a lot of really great content on that YouTube channel, and it's been 8 or 10 years, maybe. Maybe there's some
No,
older
it's
than that.
actually, I think 2010 was the first year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so almost 15.
I know one of
Yeah,
the things that happens to us is we have some great old stuff about that vintage, and YouTube just doesn't treat it very well after a while because of the video quality.
Hmm.
Like, is less likely to, no matter how popular, it's less likely to show it to the next guy because the quality of the videos improves such.
That's interesting.
And so we look at some stuff to re-record or blog post to update, just for that reason. Sometimes it's about a product, but more likely, the tackle and tactics or the techniques haven't changed much. It's just a question of formatting it in a way that, between Google and YouTube, the two biggest search engines that there are, makes the stuff easy to find. So can we spend a couple minutes talking about bucktail basics? Because for me, I recognize that people, some very good anglers are very successful with bucktails. Folks I know from here in town, right here in Newport. And I'm like, I got to get better at this. And some of my listeners have heard this already, but and I remember too heavy and hanging up in a boulder field and all the kind of trials and tribulations. But then I do remember in a place that I was familiar with, a boulder field, I fished a lot. Tide was sweeping, current was sweeping rather, and I fished a little bit lighter bucktail, but I could feel the side pressure, and that it was not a jerking thing; it was a smoother swimming presentation. Reminded me of steelhead fishing, and I'm
I've
like,
done that, so I know
I
what
got
you
it
mean.
now. I got it now,
Yeah,
and then
I
I
know
got
what you
hit.
mean. Yeah.
I got a good eat right then. It all like I got confident, and it happened.
Yeah, I'm wincing because when I was in grad school, I was up in Rochester, so I was fishing tributaries of Lake Ontario, and in the middle of winter when it was really cold up there,
going in 2 weeks.
And yeah, boy, and egg sacks, drifting egg sacks, and on a little split shot in the Genesee River, and so it's not sight fishing,
Right.
and yeah, and it was amazing. You'd be bumping around in rocks, but you could distinguish that soft take of a steelhead, and you just knew before you set the hook, you knew you were on right there. Yeah. That was exciting.
But that feeling is what it was when it came together for me. I felt like this thing's swimming, it's sexy, it's the right weight with the right current, side pressure.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of things there. I mean,
Stinging a fly.
It's
Yep.
so the hair density on the, first of all, I fish a lot of really crazy rocky areas with bucktails, and honest to God, I think I can go years without losing one.
Yeah.
And what it comes down to a lot is, the hair density's got to be there. A lot of the bucktails these days don't have a lot of hair on them.
Right.
So then you better at least knock down the weight. And it's just a matter of, I mean, I throw 1.5 ounces over rocks a lot, but those are bucktails that are, generously tied with hair, and they have hackle feathers. And, they'll swim above the structure.
I know you made some with S&S, right? Do you still do that?
Yeah. Well, no, S&S, they had an issue. There was a death, and that company kind of reinvented under S&S jigs. And now I'm with Dark Matter, which is J&H's brand for rods and things. And we actually, it's funny you say that, because, sitting on my desk is a beautiful, can you see? Yeah, beautiful prototype. It's a prototype of what we'll have out next year. And actually, I think on that video that I just posted,
hold it a little higher.
Yeah, I think on the video that I just posted, we had I was using a prototype, a white one.
I love the hackles added.
Yeah. So anyway,
you'll still use the strip too, right? Like
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, what I always say to people with bucktails is, the problem is people, for whatever reason, they have it in their mind they have to bounce it on the bottom, and you don't do that at all. I always say swim or glide, swim or just swim, glide, swim, glide, and the biggest mistake people make is they go too heavy, and part of the reason is, bucktails don't cast very well, so they have a pencil popper on or a tin, and they get this big long cast, then they put a bucktail on it, the thing goes half the distance of that other lure. So in their head, they're like, oh, I need to cast farther. So what do? They go heavy to cast farther, but now they're dragging bottom. And even if they're on sand, they're probably it's just an ineffective presentation. So you've got to have that, that lighter weight jig and swim or glide over the structure.
I know the hair collar. I mean, one of the famous, probably not original, but the most well-known maker there, Andrus, sent us an order in the last year or so with craft fur instead of bucktail, and it was just hell no, right? It
really?
Yeah, terrible.
Well, so what do you mean craft fur? I don't know what
craft fur is a just the kind of fur you might find on a kid's Halloween costume. It's a fly tying material. It's very thin and flexible. It has no stiffness. It was disaster.
Yeah. Well, what's scary is the deer hair has become very, very expensive, and it's pretty hard for people, like, to tie a quality bucktail and not have to charge $13 for it. It's so it's kind of scary. Yeah.
All the better reason not to lose them, right?
Yeah, because I tied my own for years, and you should see the amount of hair on these things.
Did you tie them with hackles from the get-go? Has that always been a preference?
Yeah, the bass bucktails. Yeah, in fact, I think. Oh, let me see. I got a lot of.
Because you use like a Spro bucktail for fluke and everything.
But even like, so this is one of my homemades. There's no hackle because there's no hook. It's a swing hook. I'm sorry. It's
I remember.
A swing. Yeah, it's a swing hook. But you can see I've got a lot of hair, and then there would be a swing hook with hackles on there, so that would be quite a bit of stuff. And yeah, I mean, so we were, instead of using 3-way rigs, we were drifting these in plum gut this year for the bass. It was very effective. Yeah, it's like that's a 6 ounce. Yeah, I used to catch
that's a 6 ounce bucktail.
Yeah, it's a 6. Yeah, I had a rubber mold. So years ago, you couldn't just go buy a mold for like 4, 5, 6 ounce bucktails. So I had one custom made, GD Industries, somewhere up by you, a rubber mold. Yeah, and this was the head they made, and I've got like lots of them over there, which is great because with this year I didn't have the advantage of having S&S make whatever I wanted. Right. So I had to go back to my old stuff, which was fine because it's really good.
But you're absolutely right. We find it kind of all around. The bucktail, the bucktail itself is, I mean, there can be, if it's a bucktail with 4-inch hair or better, it's going to be $20.
Yeah,
and it doesn't tie many bucktails.
Right. Yeah,
you use a lot of hair.
Right. In fact, that jig that I just held up, that was 4 jigs, 4 bucktails per deer tail.
Right.
That's what I would get to tie those. Yeah. My wife's family, hunters and stuff from upstate, they used to send me down this box at the end of deer season. Looked like a Jeffrey Dahmer box, man.
You're
This
the
thing was
lucky one, man.
disgusting. And they were these tails were disgusting. I'd just take them outside and hose them all down, all the blood and crap out of them. And I still have some in this basement. Yeah. And boy, I drove by a couple of dead deer today, and all I could think about, I saw all that beautiful white hair. I'm like, wow, look at all that white hair. You know?
You look pretty gristly out there on the side of the road, though.
Well, yeah, but a lot of bucktails there. Yeah.
So we talked about the design you like with lots of hair and hackles, and we mentioned you almost always have a jig strip. You know, it would have been Uncle Josh. Uncle Josh is actually back. It went away, but it came back. Do you prefer the artificial, or you go back to Uncle Josh?
So this is a funny thing,
never run out.
I got wind of Uncle Josh going out the first time before people knew, and I went and hoarded that stuff. And it's all like, it's. I mean, I don't know if you can see up in that corner underneath the plugs.
Yes,
there's like a shelf, and I don't know if you can see what's there. Those are all Uncle Josh jars of pork rind that are up there. There's probably 40 jars right there.
Oh wow, you're
underneath,
you're
underneath,
well stocked.
Underneath the plugs, right? That's what I did when I caught wind of them going out. So then the following spring, for video purposes, I said, well, gee, you know, because by now Uncle Josh was gone, right? And I had plenty of pork rind, still do. And I said, well, so otter tails was the thing at that time, that first one. So I said, wow, well, you know, this is something that would be of interest to people. You know, what's the pork rind replacement? And I got to tell you, I put that stuff on, and it worked just as well as the pork rind. And guess what? I didn't have to put it back in the jar. I could leave it on the jigs. And now my surf bag has the bucktails I use with the strips on. I don't have to worry about it drying out. I like the stuff so much. The 40 jars are still sitting up there. Yeah, so that tells you how much. And I know Uncle Josh is back, and you know what, occasionally, like in plum gut or something, I'll put those nice 7-inch strips of pork rind on. But that fat cow jig strips,
get it done.
They're yep, absolutely. Yeah.
You heard this, I imagine you have, but maybe it'll be of interest to the listener. So the story I understood that was explained to me was that the pigs were growing so fast due to hormones that the skin wasn't developing adequate thickness to create bucktails jigs strips consistently, and so that's their supply went away because the pig to market time had gone down, you know, and so that the skin wasn't
thick enough. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah.
So just taking advantage of the fact that you have this deep experience in bucktails, and you know, I know that there's a question I'm going to ask you later, and I know bucktails is going to be one of the 2 answers. So could you tell us a little bit more about how you think about, you know, you see whether it's a beach, you know, sandy beach, which you fish a lot in your videos, or the boulder fields, glide, you said, and you know, the smooth kind of side pressure and things like that. That's also balancing weight with current. Is that the right way to describe that?
Yeah, right. It's, you know, it's a matter of the, you know, water movement, whether it's generated by tide or by sweep. You know, even, you know, wind on the line, for example, you know, any of these things.
I thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, all these things that create movement. Yeah, it's a matter of matching the weight and, you know, hair density to some extent to those conditions. And you know, and it's just one of those things where, you know, once you get you said a statement, something about you know, a lot of good fishermen that are very good with a bucktail, and I thought to myself, well, they're good fishermen because they're very good with a bucktail. Because when you master that lure, you're a good fisherman. Because if you master that lure, you can catch fish in a wide variety of environments, conditions. That's the thing about a bucktail. You know, you can have all kinds of stupid turbulence that many lures would get discombobulated in, but not the bucktail. that's always going to look good. It's always going to swim right. So
and you're talking about how it performs in the water, where some other water conditions would, not enough current for a darter or for a metal
tremendous rolling surf, just
Gotcha.
insane surf that would tumble plugs or anything else. Yeah, bucktail just goes right through that. Always looks good.
Yeah, because it's done right. You're matching the retrieve and the weight to the water condition to get that feeling of that glide.
Exactly. And if you're dragging bottom, you're too heavy. If you're blowing away,
too light.
Probably too light. Yeah.
You
got to carry a lot of different weights. That's
I was just about to ask that. What do you this is from the beach. What do you reasonably throw from the beach? As small as a half?
I would say 3/4. I mean, a half only in like
the estuaries in the spring.
Exactly. Yes, there's where the half is. But even on a sand beach, 3/4 would be about as low as I would be. But I throw a lot of 1 to 1.5, rarely a 2. I mean, there was a video I had a couple weeks ago where it was really, really rough tumbling surf, and I was using a 2.5, and that's very unusual. But it was big sweep. You just in all kinds.
That's also a lure you can deliver and fish in that situation, like you just described. You just said it. I mean, you might not be able to throw it as far as some of the other lures you could throw further, but you couldn't fish them as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other thing is, people, they think they need distance when they don't. I see this in the sand eel runs. Everybody's throwing those, the diamond jigs. And yes, there are times where you need that distance, and a diamond jig is the only lure that's going to get you out there. But there are many more times where it's just a perception that you need the distance, and those fish are basically in that first wave. They're running along where the waves are breaking, and you just got to get out behind the waves. And the bucktail, even though it's not getting the big distance, it's actually in the fishier zones longer. So, yeah.
It's interesting when I'm realizing one of the things that this is subliminal, or I don't even know. But one of the things when I watch your videos is I'm very interested in where your cast lands. You know what I mean? And how and being able to watch your hands and the action you're creating with your rod and reel and the cadence and the speed. And, you made me a better pencil popper too, because it is a matter of it's not just, so many people throw it out there and think the lure does the work.
Yeah. You said something that I actually, didn't mention, is exactly the cast placement. Like when I was talking about the sweep and the surf, well, you're throwing well up. If you're throwing straight out, you're gone before anything's going to happen. And it's hard because, hey, that sweep, those waves are coming from that direction because there's a 25-knot wind coming from there. So you're basically firing into the wind, cutting your distance more, but you just got to get over that hump a little bit, and then, slow retrieve, and that sweep's going to take you right down through the sweet spot.
And I've seen I fished with a fly rod some, and I'm a big fan of the trough, and the videos I watched, that's pretty recent because it's sand eel related. So I believe it was this from this fall. I was jumping around. I was really kind of blown away by how much there was when because I usually watch the one that comes in as much as I can of that, not always the 30 minutes, but then there's when I started digging around in the last couple of days, I found the sand eel one where you actually threw down the beach, keeping the, you behind the wave, and then a slow retrieve, and it gets in that.
Oh, was that an older video?
Huh?
Was that one of my older videos?
I guess so.
Yeah.
But it was it was a tsunami sand eel.
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Right. And I don't know how old it was, because like I said, I was down a rat hole. You make a good cast, down the beach, and not parallel, but enough to be behind the wave, and then you just let it come through the zone, and that is such a productive place on sand beaches that have that trough. I mean, I have a buddy, a snook fishing buddy, on the east coast of Florida, where there's a pretty good trench that runs down at least the sandy parts of it. I don't know about all of it, but where he fishes, and he came from the Northeast. He went down there and he just, sort of screw that, throwing it out. He went right along the beach, and that they're hard to see, but they're right there coming down the beach.
Yeah, I haven't done that fishing because it's a summer fishery in Southwest Florida. They're
Yeah, you're not there.
right. I'm not there at that time, but during the summer, they're out along like Sanibel, Captiva, the Barrier Islands, and yeah, it's apparently the wave trough. Yeah,
Pretty cool.
yeah.
The different environments. So a smaller 3/4 to about 1.5 bucktail, always with a teaser. You like them.
A trailer, not a teaser.
Well. I'm sorry.
You said a teaser. I'm talking about a trailer.
Yeah.
In fact, I can tell you, never a teaser for me with a bucktail,
right.
ever. Yeah.
And then as it relates to the Northeast, any thoughts on color? I saw that blurple one. I think of that as a night, but
yeah, it's a night jig. Yeah. White is, during the day, just give me white, it's fine.
Yeah.
White's never wrong. And white's fine at night too, but yeah, at night, that blurple's a nice color.
Yeah. I there's sometimes you look at people's plug bags and there's a wide variety of plugs, but not much variety of color, because it is white. And it's some people really feel like that does most of it for me. And then there might be occasions to have a different color, but it's more what does the lure do is what, creates the interest from the fish, how you fish the lure. Right.
Right.
I meant to actually start a little differently than where we did. I had this note to myself, geez, I dug into all this stuff and, you fish from the surf, from a kayak, from a boat, from an e-bike, you scuba. The Pine Island Sound stuff was in which we said earlier, is a place I've been going, probably been there a half dozen times in my life for a little bit of a, week or so, but I feel like I have a familiarity with it. And boy, you've got an awful lot of content you've done down there. And then your surf stuff is albies, fluke, stripers, obviously weakfish and blackfish. I mean, there's so much. I was like, where do we start? But I think one of the things I wanted to understand better about you, John, was you strike me as kind of like our mutual friend Jerry, in the sense that you're have a very thorough thought process.
Are you talking about Odette?
Yes.
Yeah, we were exchanging emails like 10 minutes ago. He's down in the Keys right now, and we're bouncing stuff about the Keys.
He's another good example of that kind of bringing that kind of brain.
Yeah, analytical fisherman. Yeah.
What's that?
He's an analytical fisherman.
Yes. You describe yourself that way as well. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Good. And I know you had. And what was the academic stuff you did at Stony Brook? I think, right?
No, Brookhaven Lab.
That's different.
Yeah, absolutely. Brookhaven National Lab runs big scientific user facilities. So I wrote software development there, user interfaces and so forth, basically experiment control, because that's what happens. You get scientists from all around the world that use these facilities. And I wrote the software to control protein crystallography experiments there. I mean, I personally knew 2 Nobel Prize winners. It's funny. I didn't realize how big league it was until one day I came into work and somebody said, "Oh, did you hear about Rick?" And I was like, "No, what happened?" "Oh, he won the Nobel Prize for chemistry." I'm like, "Holy crap!" And then one of the guys that worked in our department, he won it a couple of years later, so yeah.
So I've certainly heard of Brookhaven. I know the Stony Brook. And I thought are they co-located or still no?
No, that's Stony Brook's a university, and we're a national laboratory. Or Brookhaven's a national laboratory.
Yeah, but you're both out on that east end of Long Island.
Right. And that was, so I was, always with scientists all the time. I worked with a lot of really, really smart people. I used to think of myself as the dumbest in the room, and but a cool thing about that location is it's in the center of the island there. 20 minutes one way is Smith's Point, Fire Island National Seashore, the ocean, Mauritius, all that. 20 minutes the other way is where I lived, up in Wading River, through the Sound and all of that. So I had it on both sides of me, and I was very good at my job, and they were very dependent on what I did. And they were foolish enough to let me basically do a one-man show after a while. So they were very willing to let me take time. We got a decent amount of vacation time. I could take it in 1 hour increments, and I could just I could basically bail and fish, and so that served me very well. Yeah.
Because that analytical mind maybe it's just in the way you say different things, but and also you've shot so many videos, but you just let things spill here and there that I'm just like, oh, that's interesting, that are just in the context of, I don't think you're filling time, you're teaching the whole time, but that's your,
I don't fill
right?
time.
There's a little thing you said about, I think it might have been fluke fishing, but you were talking about swimming mullet and what you like about them, and you create you've clearly done the homework, and you're like, 4 inches shallow water, big fish will eat a 4-inch one, but if it's deeper water, bigger jig, 6-inch, and it was just like boom, 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 and I'm like, I'm just gonna adopt that as my
you can. It'll save you time and money.
Not reinventing the wheel. It's interesting. The other thing is, I myself want to be a better fluke fisherman, want to be a better black fisherman. I spent a lot of time on stripers and albies. They're probably my favorites, but the fisheries are changing, and I think for me it's I'm becoming more interested in jigging, and
variety is fun. Having variety is fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. But little things like that go a long way for someone who's like standing on the outside trying to figure out, let's just because my approach would be to try and get a couple of setups, whether it's tackle wise or lure wise, that you get confidence in. You work with a couple of things, not a bunch.
Yeah, right? I'm laughing because I've often said, if you look in my surf bag, you're going to be bored.
Let me hear.
Well, if you look in my North Fork surf bag, you're going to only find pencils and spooks. I mean, you're not going to find anything else, and the colors aren't going to be very impressive either. It's like, just those two lures. I'm either throwing a pencil or I'm throwing a spook. It's one or the other.
And you're so both topwaters.
Yeah.
That about the pencil, its versatility. You're on your veranda, whatever it's called down there in Florida, with the water behind you, maybe your dock, I don't know. But it was you were talking about two lures, and it was bucktail.
Oh, with Tim from the Fisherman, he was.
Maybe.
Yeah, he came over. Yeah, he lives in.
He's got a house in the same town. But the take, it's still a hot take today. So you were talking about the way you feel like a pencil popper works, not the way to work it like in the water, but the objective or how it becomes a curiosity to fish, how it's an attracting. Would you talk people through that?
Yeah, I mean, it's I often call it the closest thing a surfcaster has to a fish finder, because you get good distance, you cover a lot of water. It has action that will get fish that are not, they're neutral, they're not seeming to really, be looking to feed, but I think it annoys them. And they'll come up. And the nice thing is, like with any top water, you don't actually have to have the fish hit to know that there's a fish there. And just seeing a boil behind a plug is very useful information.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in those respects, the pencil is a great lure. Now, if you can reach those fish with a spook, it seems to me the spook will outproduce the pencil normally, but just not the greatest casting lure in the world. So
right. So cover the ground, maybe find a candidate, and then fish for them with a spook if you can reach.
Well, where I am, it's like tide dependent. If the tide's a little lower and I can get out to a rock that's out a little farther, I'll just start with the spook, and then do whatever I can do, and then go to a pencil and expand the water. I mean, hit the water that I couldn't hit with the spook. So that's usually what I'll do. Yeah.
With the pencil, there's plenty of places to go, and videos of yours to watch how to work a pencil. But how many if you were standing on the beach with somebody, some fisherman friend of yours who's come from California, has fishing experience, but you'd clip on a pencil, what would you tell him to do with it? I mean, he's going to know the casting and all that, the bail and all that stuff. We're like, here's what you need to do. What does that take away on a pencil?
Boom, 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 boom. Just get that thing.
You really want
tear up the surface of the water with it.
Okay.
That's basically tear up. You don't want the fish to get a really clear look at it. especially in, I'm fishing the North Fork. It's calm, it's clear. We have nice clear water, as you do up there. And so I think the more of a disturbance you've got up there, the better off you are. They can't get a good look to see it's just a piece of plastic.
Yeah. So that's that, but that would be a consistent way. Because I know some people, the wooden ones that float. You can retrieve them really slow, and they'll create a little V wake if they're staying up on the surface, which is kind of nice in a quiet situation. But your point is you're fish finding, and it's going to dance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And and I've over the years I've kind of like leaned more now towards pencils that don't float. And one of the reasons is, and one of the ones, first of all, I like, and this will annoy people, but I don't care for wood. I use plastic for a number of reasons. They're all consistent. They're all good. They don't get damaged. There's no blems, they're just all the same. And there's some good ones out there. And well, the two that I use, I actually had input into them. One's the Savage Gear Panic pencil. Yeah, I mean, I worked with their lure designer to come up with that plug.
What's his? There's some big Scandinavian dude, right?
No,
that's somebody else then.
No, Jose is his first name because I fished with him.
Savage Gear. I got it wrong.
I fish with him in Florida now because he works for one of the other good freshwater ones, not freshwater, one of the southern ones. I can't think of it now. Anyway, so I worked with them on that, and it's just an awesome plug. And then the other one was, Dark Matter had a good pencil, but I kept saying to Josh, you got to make it heavier. So I kept injecting them with different things, trying to get the right weight, and arrived at 2.6 ounces being like the weight that it would cast forever. But
I'm like 2.6 ounces. Oh my God!
But not ruin the action on it. Yeah. So that guy, he went ahead, got the mold made. So the Dark Matter Heavy is the 2.6.
It's hard to outwork, Josh. I'll tell you that.
If you, so I use two plugs that I was involved in if somebody makes something exactly the way you want it, you're probably going to use it. So I use the Dark Matter Heavy, and I use the Savage Gear Panic pencil, and both are like 2.6, 2.7 in that range.
Okay.
Fantastic.
I know the Panic pencil.
And
in two sizes? Am I wrong?
Yeah. Huh? The Panic pencils in two sizes. Yeah.
Okay, so you're talking probably about the bigger one.
Yeah. Okay. The middle one's a good one as well. Yeah. So so I rely on those two pencils, and hey, the Guppy pencils were great. I used to use those, but I really like these plastic ones, and so I those and the spooks. Yeah.
So I guess I've got a couple of areas I want to go, and one of the things for sure is you spent so much time with video, but I also feel like with your analytical mind, just what you see with your eyes, I think it's pretty interesting in a way. You got what all the rest of us could see without a drone or whatever you call it, underwater. What do you call it? Your it's not a drone. It's the opposite. It's dives.
ROV.
What's that?
ROV.
ROV.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Because, as I look, those underwater videos, and you do some scuba, so you collect a lot of data with your eyes, between just standing on the beach like the rest of us do, what we get to see with you from your GoPro, but the stuff you've been doing around Blackfish and maneuvering through boulder
fluke and Blackfish. Fluke and Blackfish. I've got really good underwater video to demonstrate how those fish work. And
what are some of the what are the lessons? What are the underwater video lessons you have? Any rules of thumb that would be helpful to people.
Okay, for fluke, motion in the strike zone. That's the key. Because I was lucky to record video on like in the clearest water I'd ever seen in Long Island Sound. It was actually, I could see my lure in 17 feet of water. It's the only day I've ever seen that. Yeah. And I was taking underwater video that day. Yeah. And that's when I was able to record having a bouncing gulp rig over here, and then a fresh strip of meat, beautiful strip bait here. And the fluke would come in. They would ignore that fresh strip of meat. I'm just not saying most of the time go for the gulp. No. You would have 2 or 3 fluke chasing this bouncing gulp rig, totally ignoring the strip of meat. Now, if you caught a fish on the gulp, and then yes, you could catch one on that strip. It's not that they didn't want the strip, but boy, they see that motion. That's it. Motion. So that was my lesson there. When I coach people with fluke fishing, I just tell them motion in the strike zone. I don't care how you produce it. I mean, what I do is rapid jigging, because that's what I was doing in the underwater video. They loved it.
I was watching today, and I was like, "What is he doing?" It's an awful lot of hand action. Yeah, I thought I wasn't. I couldn't see your other hand. I thought maybe you were like, okay,
just and the underwater video shows that rig, and they just like a magnet. They just go for that. And so I tell people, if that's tiring, just at least even if you have to lever it and ba-boom, ba-boom, but whatever you're doing. Don't just drag it through the water. Put motion. That's the most important thing.
Can I ask you how I know how you rig for fluke. It is a Spro type bucktail, the swimming mullet, probably a 4-inch, and then is that where the I'm not sure the correct terminology, but it would be a shrimp gulp or something, or that strip, right? Isn't that how you're typically rigged for fluke?
Well, it's
or does it vary?
So it's just 2 loops. You got a surgeon's loop on the bottom, a dropper loop 1 foot above that, and on the bucktail on the bottom one, a gulp. And if it's in the ocean, it's going to be a 6-inch gulp grub. If it's in Long Island Sound or in the bays, the back bays, a 4-inch gulp grub. And then on the top one, I use the tsunami teasers a lot. The silicone skirt teasers in the ocean. And put a 6-inch grub on that. Now, if I'm in like Shinnecock Bay or something, a lot of times I'll just use a 3.0 Gamakatsu bait holder hook and just a gulp grub on that. And and that.
And so the strike zone you're talking about is the bucktail with the grub on it on the bottom, and
it's just off the bottom. It's just
the other piece is up about a foot.
Yeah, but the bucktail's not bouncing on the bottom.
Okay.
You're touching bottom to know where the bottom is, but then you're jigging and you're up off the bottom. And I've got really nice underwater video showing, the fluke couple feet off the bottom following that teaser. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that was it. It was just really sold me. Not that I wasn't already sold on the gulp, but to see the effect of motion on the rig. The other thing was, people would put stinger hooks on baits and say, oh, when you get a hit, you got to give them time to eat. That's absolute utter nonsense, because even the video I would take of just a strip bait, though they were one time in it, just boom, the whole thing gone, boom, every time. None of this giving them time. You're not doing anything. You're just hooking them deeper.
I think it's.
Oh, true. And I'm sorry. I hate to cut you. One other thing.
Absolutely.
You can't strike too early. If you miss a fluke, you're only going to piss him off, and he's going to come right back. And and again, this is every time. I've seen it so many times. And when I would rig these things up, I actually don't want to catch the fluke on the camera if I have it attached to the camera. So I have a hook protector on there. So I've got the fluke where it grabs the thing, and of course he's not getting hooked, and it pops out of his mouth, and he grabs it again, and it pops out of his mouth, and he grabs 6, 7 times. Yeah. So if you miss him, it doesn't make any difference. He's just going to come back. So as soon as you feel it there, set the hook. And the other thing is, if you've got one on, even if he's halfway up and you lose him, you get that rig right back down there again, because they're pretty stupid. They're going to, a lot of times,
hit it again.
They'll come right back. Yeah.
Thank you for continuing.
Sorry. Yeah.
The only point I was going to make is, I think sometimes I had an experience fishing with a couple of very good fishermen, and I remember this guy made a cast to a high flyer with mahi on it, and he made maybe 3 cranks, and 5 fish rushed out and no one ate. He's like, they don't want it. And he switched to something else. I've never seen anything eat. He threw it in there, cranked it once, and he was tight. And
Cool.
the point is, he knows, and you just sort of spoke to it too. If they want it, they're killers. They're going to, whether it's a mahi or a, you know what I mean? If they commit, they're going to finish the job. Right. And I was like, I was thinking to myself, watching this guy do this, you know, I don't fish offshore very often, but it was a takeaway observation to me, because I could see a lot of times me or my peers might say, oh, they didn't see it, or I'll throw it to the other side, or I'll slow it down, or make all these other, it's like, hell no, you don't have to wait like you're talking about for them to eat it, like you're describing with a fluke thing there. You're like, no, man, they want it. It's a done deal.
Right. I've got an analogy for that in one or two of the books, and it has to do with when you throw in plugs, pencils, and the fish blows up on the plug but doesn't touch it. I won't throw that plug back to the fish. And my analogy is, you're sitting in a restaurant and the waiter comes up to you and goes, "How about chicken tonight?" And you look at him and you go, "No, I really don't want chicken." Well, he's not going to say to you, "Well, then why not try the chicken?" Right? He's going to offer you something else. And I feel like if I leave that plug on, I feel like the waiter just asking me again if I want the thing I told you I didn't want. I mean, look, these fish, a big striper, that fish knows how to eat. He didn't miss your plug. He didn't want to eat it. So why give him the same thing? He's there, he's kind of interested, or else he wouldn't have blown up. Just change the size of the plug, change the color, something subtle, run it right back over him. And it's so that there you go. It's the same thing as your mahi example.
Yeah, exactly right. Pretty cool. How about I think I saw one of the very first Blackfish ones you did. I think wasn't there a camera that you like put on the line and it slides down with it? You drop a jig down and the camera was literally a couple feet away.
Oh yeah.
One of your very first, I think it was, because I was like, holy shit.
So that's where you're getting to see the jig drops.
Like, holy shit.
You could see the jig drops in front of the camera, and you could see the fish come in on. Is that the one? Okay, yes. So that was really good, because what happened was I got the camera cable kind of caught on the rock, but the camera just happened to be then next to the rock, looking out over the area where I was dropping my jigs. So I was like, this is great. And I got jig drop after jig drop in the camera frame. And it showed what, look, when you're blackfishing, you put your bait down, and at least where I am on the North Fork, you put down almost all the time. You're getting hit right away. And what do you think? Oh, there's a fish there. No, there's not a fish there. There's 20 fish there, and you don't want any of them. You've got little blackfish, you got little sea bass, porgies, all this crap, and they peck, and that's all those little taps that you're feeling. But when the blackfish comes, they just part. They just go out of his way, and the blackfish picks it up, a decent one, and swims away. And that's why when you're jig fishing, you have to sit there and you wait through all these little pecks, but then all of a sudden you feel steady movement. When you feel there's your blackfish right there. And to watch that on video and see 15, 20 fish converge on the jig immediately, and then see this big guy come in, grab it, off he goes, and then actually sometimes you can even see I get him. It's that's cool.
So the way I interpreted that is the little fish are creating this commotion or scene, and there's a curiosity in the blackfish, right? What's going on over there? Is that how you
100%
more of it than me? Fill in a blank if I missed something.
There's two parts of that. Yes, for sure. What you just said, that's true. But the other thing is blackfish attract other blackfish. So, how long do you stay on a piece before you move? And to me, it depends how well do you know the piece. And if it's something I haven't fished, I'll stay on it 30 minutes. If it's a rock that I know is good, I have no issue with staying there for 4 hours, even if the first 2 hours suck, because I know it's good. And what happens, all of a sudden, you're picking away. In fact, one of my recent kayak videos was like that. It was like, boy, it just wasn't very good for like 2 hours. I was getting small shorts, like 12, 13, 14 inches. And all of a sudden I get a couple that were up towards 16. And I said, oh, that's a little different. And then, boy, then I get 10 keepers and I get a couple 7, plus pounders mixed in with that. And I sat on the same spot for like 4 hours. And in the beginning, it was nothing there, but I knew the rock well. And I knew that, once you get some blackfish in, it draws in other blackfish. And that's why they say build the bite is the saying. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I've heard it, and it's just great to have the visual, proof or whatever to complement what people have for beliefs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in that video you mentioned the one where I said I had the cable caught on the side of the rock. I knew I had it framed really well, so I spent probably an hour dropping jigs in front of that camera. And I pointed out in the video that in the beginning there wasn't that much there, but as time went on, there were more and more blackfish and more bigger blackfish. 45 minutes in, well, there's a couple of 6-pounders moved in. They weren't there in the beginning.
Right.
So stay with it. Yeah.
So let's change gears. I'm going to read something here real quick, and then we'll get back to a few more questions. This podcast is brought to you by the Saltwater Edge. We've been serving surf, fly, and inshore anglers for more than 30 years. The next time you have saltwater tackle needs, please think of the Saltwater Edge, where the only thing you can't get is more time on the water. One of the things, I thought you were an academic, a teacher. Not really. You were a computer scientist,
a software developer. Yeah.
Okay. Because I was wondering, I really have an appreciation for how people learn differently. Some people like to learn through their eyes, and you have all that video. Some people like to read it, and you've got great books. I didn't know if that was the idea in the beginning, that you're looking for ways to connect with people, or what? Did the videos just sort of come to you? Because you had a couple books under your belt before the videos, I believe.
A lot of this was kind of accidental. You might have thought I was a teacher, because I actually, like, when I give seminars and stuff, I don't want to say I do a decent job of it. And part of the reason is when I worked at Brookhaven, I used to have to give presentations to the scientists, and these were smart people.
Yeah,
you were going to pull anything over on them.
Yeah, know your stuff.
And absolutely. And so when you're giving talks to people who've won freaking Nobel Prizes, man, you can't suck, Yeah. So I know I got that presentation skill. Working at the lab, I know that came from there. As to the videos, well, here's what happened was, RISA, not the big show, but the club talks.
Right.
So they invited me up one evening to do a club talk, and why I went from Long Island to Rhode Island for an evening club talk, I don't know. But anyway, I did. And this was before I had video. And it was, at this point, I was already bucktailing, light tackle bucktailing the fluke, obliterating the fish. And, even to this day, I think a lot of those Rhode Island guys still are bait draggers. I'm not saying all of them, but there's still a lot of bait draggers. I know that because when we fish around Block, we see a lot more bait fishermen up there than we do off of Montauk. But in 2010, they were all concerned with catching their fresh squid, which was the talk before mine was catching squid. And they were, this concept of fishing with light tackle. I brought one of my rods and the rigs and showed them the stuff. And man, I could just tell, I could read that audience that they weren't buying it, that they could use that kind of tackle and it was going to outfish their squid, and the whole time I was giving the talk, I was saying to myself, man, if I could show these people video, that would change their minds. And there were no GoPros back then. I had a flip camera. I don't even know why or what I did with this flip camera, but for $35, you could buy a waterproof housing for it. So the very first fluke trip of the spring,
following spring,
we went out, me and my 2 kids, and the kids were like, I don't know, were they 9 and 10 or 7 and 8, whatever they were. So what we would do is we were alternating drifts, and one drift one kid would do nothing but hold the camera and video the action. The next drift, the other kid would take the camera. And those are my first two. If you go on my YouTube channel and go all the way to the first two fishing videos,
You're doing that small one.
It's that trip.
That's great.
And we hammer the fluke. And we didn't even use teasers. All we used was like a 3/4 ounce bucktail and a 3-inch. They didn't make grubs in that size at the time. It was a 3-inch gulp swimming mullet. And you watch that video and we just hammer them. So now I had material. Well, so then the funny thing is that video did very well. I mean, nobody was really doing fishing videos. It was 2009, I think. And YouTube contacted me asking me if I was interested in revenue sharing. And I just assumed that was a scam. So I researched that and found out, no, they're not trying to scam me. And, you know, soon I was making upwards of $1 in a day, you know, or something crazy with the video views. And then, you know, it kind of just went from there. It was never, I never sat down and said, oh, like kids today, oh, I'm going to be a YouTuber and go video my fishing trips. And
YouTube found you. It's the other way around.
Yeah,
right?
kind of. You know, I was just looking to get some material to convince the people in Rhode Island that you could catch fluke with a bucktail instead of a big piece of meat dead stick in a rod holder. And yeah, so that's how that got started. Yeah.
Wow. It's like I got another 2 pages of notes, and we're gonna kind of wrap it up, but maybe we come back and do a Southwest Florida episode.
Absolutely.
And I haven't even got to my hacked up book. I got questions, you know.
Hey, we could do this stuff. And these things always are a lot of fun, you know. They just because you got two fishermen talking about fishing. How hard can it be?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And who's better than me, because I get to talk to the guys that have sincere questions and admiration.
Yeah, this is great.
It's the best, you know. So I don't think I'll even open this up, only to say that I haven't seen the gannets this year for the last part of the herring run. Have you had much of that yet?
We don't get herring runs like we used to.
Yeah.
I did see gannets about, I think it was about a week ago. No, more like 10 days ago. But I think they might have been on shad. There were shad around.
Interesting. And the other thing, I had an observation up here. It took a long time for the peanuts to leave the estuaries and up in the bays to make it out front here in Newport, you know, at the bottom of Narragansett Bay.
I never saw a single peanut on the North Fork of Long Island this year. None.
There you go. So it's not just me. I was like,
none,
because it's a great bait for getting off of the anchovies. You know, it's a great fly rod bait. You know, it makes that part something I enjoy, makes that fun. You know, and I just couldn't find them until.
No, we didn't have any, but we haven't had them in the last couple of years. We don't get adult bunker schools anymore. I mean, when I first moved out to Greenport, because I used to live like 25 miles west of here. When I first moved out to Greenport, there were bunker schools all the time, and in the last couple of years, we don't have them. Yeah, the adults.
So, going to ask you a couple of questions. Last couple final questions. And thinking about the Northeast, we'll leave Florida for another time. I look forward to that. What would be 2 tips you'd give an angler? And I mean, my God, I feel like a crazy person even asking you, since you've got thousands of hours of tips and video. But if there are 2 tips you might share with somebody who's looking to become a better angler, you know, what would they be? What would you give them for basic direction?
Well, don't run yourself all over the place. Try to find places that you can fish frequently. Focus more on places that are closer to your home, that you can learn very carefully, because you're going to be better off fishing those spots, learning them well, and you probably have them mostly to yourself if they're, you know, depending on where you are, as opposed to chasing down the so-called top shelf spots that are in the magazines and everything else, you know,
or the reports.
I mean, yes, right. You know, report chasing.
You operate without a network.
I do. And you know, like I said, there are a few times when it can be challenging. I would have loved to have known what was on the South Shore Columbus Day, because they had like 3 or 4 days there where they had tremendous run of big fish,
Yeah.
35 miles from me. But I don't have a network, so I didn't know that. I can't know everything. I can't see, the South Shore of Long Island from where I
Send one of
live.
your drones over
You know,
there.
but it's just but in general, don't spread yourself thin. Try
Get intimate with the spot.
try and learn. Pick areas that obviously have fish. You've got to know that the areas have fish. Not every place does.
Mhm.
Learn those spots very well, and that you can really put sustained pressure on. Because if what used to be hard for me when I lived in Wading River, Montauk. All right, Montauk was, Montauk is Montauk, but I have to think of the trip overhead. And if you're working and you have to drive an hour and 20 minutes to get somewhere, and then you have to walk 20 minutes, and you have to suit up and suit down, you have to look at how much lost time, how much trip overhead goes in to a trip like
Well,
that.
that's what trip overhead means. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, no,
Totally.
if you're losing, if you're losing even
Waste time,
3 hours,
time.
yeah,
That you can be in
if
the
you're
water
losing
learning
even
something.
3 hours a night, just on that, how many nights in a row can you pull that off and still work? Because
Yeah.
I used to be able to go, and that's what you need to do to be good, is you got to be able to find those bites, figure them out, and get on them and
Mhm.
exploit them. And if you have to waste so much time driving around, you're never going to learn the spots in the first place. And then
Yeah.
even if you do nail them down, how are you going to put sustained pressure on them? Now, if you
Right.
can find a spot that's, you can be on in, 45, 50 minutes, well, that, suddenly, you then, maybe there's a 2 hour window. Well, 45 minutes there, let's say even it's an hour, and you get 2 good hours of fishing, and an hour back, well, there's 4 hours. Okay.
Yeah.
You can
Do
probably
that.
do that if you're,
Get your
young.
job done the next day.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one tip. Is there another one you think of? Maybe about anything about the resources you use, technology you might use? I know, not to put this in your mouth, but being a software guy, you developed a logging, fish logging platform some time ago.
Yeah. Like 2009. Yeah.
Yeah, so the software didn't keep up or something, right? I mean, do you still use it as
Here's the
is?
funny thing about that is I was still up until last year selling some of them, and
Oh,
it still works. I mean, I actually interacted with somebody this week over it, and so it's still there. But the problem was the company that handled the payments suddenly changed the way they did things, and it just at this point didn't make sense for me to keep it going, so I don't sell them anymore. But
right.
I did sell them right up to the point that the payment company got to
Made it
be a
hard.
problem for me. And but it was still working. But yeah, so the point there is to log, you know keep a log. Now, I got to tell you, I don't log much these days. However, I have obviously a video log, right? If
Yeah.
I'm curious about something, I can go back to my own videos, and I can
But
understand
back in
what's
the day
going
with
on.
your software, what kind of stuff did you log? Like barometric pressure, time of the tide, all that kind of stuff?
Wind, weather, water, tide, and sorry, wind direction, weather, the water, as in, wave heights, clarity.
Yeah.
um I would put temperature in there, even though I wasn't measuring it. I would have, some idea,
Right.
and wind strength, direction, that all that kind of stuff. And yeah, that was cool. Yeah, that, and I had
Like so you can research a northeast wind again, right?
I had, analysis tools in there, which
Yeah,
made it was actually a really,
I bet.
very good program. Yeah. But even if you didn't, I always said to people, hey, even if you don't do that, just keep a notebook, because it's hard to remember. You think, oh, I'm going to remember, but no, you can't remember. You might remember that 8 years ago you caught fish in a certain area, but you're going to remember the tide and the conditions and everything else?
Yeah,
Probably not.
yeah. But I mean, I
Um,
think it's hard to even, make a good log of a night after you fished versus
hmm,
if you can use a camera to take. Currently, you couldn't do that then, but now you
yeah.
can use a camera. You get all that the location data, and the rest you can get later. It'll know what barometric pressure was, what these things were at that time.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. A friend of mine once made a comment. He goes, "Yeah, the only way to make the log stuff work is you have to be able to log when you're at work." And that was, he had a
Well
good
done.
point there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one other thing I would suggest to people is,
Yeah.
in the same way I was saying, try to minimize your spots and not run all over the place crazy. Try to minimize your tackle, your lures. Like I said, my bag is very boring. I'm on the North Fork, and I've got pencils and spooks. And all right, if I'm going to walk to this one other spot, I'm going to have bucktails too. Pencil, spooks, and bucktails. Probably, I don't even want to tell you what percentage of my fishing is done on the beach with pencil, spooks, and bucktails.
Yeah,
and boring colors.
It's right there to the idea of the spots. Not moving around a lot. Keep it simple. Learn it.
Because there's so many other variables that go into fishing. There's so many other things, and it's a matter of trying to. And the other thing is to try and have a play to run under all kinds of conditions. I mean, that's what I was always looking for, what I called systems. All right, spot A on a northwest wind, over 20 knots. Incoming water. Yeah, that spot's good. And the point is, when you're working, you can't always fish all the time, right? So you can't pick your condition. I can pick my conditions now, right? I can fish anytime I want. So I can pick good conditions, but that wasn't always the case. So if I can fish, but the wind's blowing west at 30, well, if I don't have a play to run on west 30, then I'm not fishing, you know? So I was often trying to fill in the wind compass there, and with speed, obviously, to know that, okay, east, I can do that, hard west, I can do that, northeast, so to be able to fill that in and always have a play to run, that's a very useful thing, so you can be productive when you can fish.
Right, and your North Fork here's the Long Island Sound side, and here's the Peconic side, right? So you can get out some of that.
Yeah, but at that, but actually, yes, I mean, there's an example where you probably could run around, but if you're going to fill in something like that, you're probably going to need even a little wider area. Like I need an inlet, because it's got two sides, and I some different structure rolled in. So to do that, I found myself jumping between the South Shore and the North Shore, which was a little easier when I lived a little farther west. Like you said, now I'm out on the Fork. I've got to come back down the Fork and go across. Whereas before I worked between the two. So I was, they were boop. Yeah. But you're right. I do have both sides of the Fork. However, the south side of the Fork is rarely productive for surf fishing. There are certain times of the year it's very good, but that's a small part of the year. Yeah.
Got it. So there's a question I ask everybody about name two lures or flies, and I'm going to fill it in for you. It's going to be because we not beat it to death, but we certainly covered bucktails and pencils, and then spooks we said, and then I think that'd be there's certainly others for other special occasions, but I'll answer that question for you because you've
absolutely
written books about it.
Yeah.
One last question, John. You have one day left on Earth. Where are you going to fish and what for?
Yeah, so my gut reaction, without thinking hard, the fish was tarpon.
Ooh.
Now you got to understand, I've done stripers for many, many years, and tarpon for many less years.
Yeah.
But how you've caught some tarpon? Yeah. You've caught some. Yeah. You caught some big ones?
No, not big, but I had one big one hooked in Pine Island Sound.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Holy God. I've got a couple kayak videos from this past winter. Oh my goodness. I mean, it's just unfreaking believable when you've got 6 foot, and it's not an exaggeration when I say 6 foot. That's what they are. When you've got 6 foot of silver that launches a few feet, 4 feet up in the air out of the water,
and it's rattling,
the noise, just the noise alone. Oh my God, what could be more exciting than that?
Right.
It's sick. So yeah, tarpon. I don't care where.
Emphatic answer, tarpon.
Yeah.
Hey, John, I've really enjoyed this. Like I say, and I think it's a testament to your level of knowledge and your ability to communicate that you're one of the handful of writers that I find myself rereading the most. And I think
appreciate that.
That's as good a compliment as I could give anybody, frankly, because I think it's really proof. You know, I read what I think is going to make me better. And I've read this one, Striper Pursuit.
Yeah, I love seeing a book hammered like that, all the things in it. Yeah, I like that.
Good stuff. Yeah. Hey, man, let's get together again sometime down the road to do a Southwest Florida version.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sounds great.
All right, man. Well, safe transitions to Florida, and I'll catch up with you, in the next couple of weeks, probably.
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Got you, John. Take care.